Welcome in, everyone. You are listening once again to the Authority Podcast here on the B Podcast Network. Thanks, as always, for joining us. We're here to have a conversation. You've heard episodes we've done previously here about the PLC at work process, various angles and elements of that. And we're digging into that again today, but with a new angle on family engagement. My guest is Nathaniel Provencio. He has worked in public education since 2001 as a classroom teacher, building administrator, and associate superintendent. He's a speaker, school leadership coach, and author of the book we're discussing today, Community Connections and Your PLC at Work, a guide to engaging families. Nathaniel, welcome to the show.
What's up, Ross? Thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it. And I love the fact that we're neighbors. So there's a connection right there. We're like just a couple of zip codes down from each other, man. And so that's another excuse to connect together and at a different time, maybe on my way to DCA, you know what I mean? There's still flights available. So got to touch base sometime, brother.
Excellent. Well, we found each other on Zoom today for listeners here. But yeah, it's a great connection to start out with. And hey, community connections, that we're the community here connecting. And I guess let's start with, there's a lot of ideas, right? We don't want to assume everybody has the same understanding of or is coming at it from the same direction. So I kind of figure let's talk first about how are parent and family engagement important to schools? Like, what are the elements in your view, in your experience as a school leader, that makes those elements critical enough to of course write a book around?
Yeah, man. It's interesting. Educators have this interesting dynamic that our internship started when we were like 5 years old. We've been in education first and foremost as students, right? And then so much of education is like we teach how we were taught, and then often we lead how we were led. And I go back and think about all of my experiences as a student and my working class, paycheck to paycheck parents. God bless them. They just wanted me to be alive. I'm a Gen Xer, right? So have a pulse, come home when the lights come on, go to school, make good grades. And that's our capacity. That's all we can do. We might help with homework every now and then, help with a project. But man, my parents were just, they did the best that they could just to help us survive, right? And I often think about, what would have happened if they were in an environment where they knew the questions to ask my teachers, if they had a sense of advocacy, if they had a sense of agency with me as a student, like a lot of middle class families have. I don't know what your upbringing, if your parents were really hyper involved. I mean, mine weren't. So, it's no one's fault, but that's been just kind of like the ethos that we've had in America. And so I became a teacher, and you always, as coming a teacher, you want to do the best that you can with what you have, and you want to inspire kids, and and you work with communities. And I realized that as a teacher, Ross, I never wanted my parents in my classroom. Like I was like, get out of here. Like I don't want you. Like you're in the way. And I worked in a middle class environment when I was a teacher. And it wasn't that I was like afraid of them, Ross. I just didn't have the skills. I never learned in my undergraduate work how to deal with parents, how to make a phone call, how to have a modicum of customer service or experience, right? But I gotta write a damn good lesson plan, right? I could write a great lesson plan and I could do these things, but I didn't have that. So once again, we teach how we were taught, and then I became a leader, and then I'm in a school, and I had this opportunity to lead this amazing Title I school, in Northern Virginia in the DMV. And I noticed that, we have a lot of challenges in this school. And we have really great teachers, but we're working in independent, we have this independent contractor kind of mentality. And I'm looking at all these other schools in America as a school leader, trying to what's the difference, man? What separates great schools from average schools? And Ross, what I found was great schools double down on collaboration, and they also double down on having a strong parent and family connection. So it's if I'm trying to figure this out as a school leader, that's what I got to do. That's all I can control. I can't control my curriculum. I can't control what standards are being thrown at me. I can't control the test. But here's what we can do. We can figure out how to collaborate together. And let's do that through a structural format professional learning communities. And at the same time, if we're going to double down on collaboration inside the school, well, maybe we need to start inviting these parents into our school and help them help us. Let's teach them about our standards. Let's teach them how to do homework. Let's give them parenting skills. Let's create like this doors open policy where parents and families feel just as comfortable coming to our classrooms and we feel comfortable going to their living rooms as well.
Mhm.
You know, then you go 10 years down the road, we're one of the most successful schools in Northern Virginia. And so I was like, listen, if we crack the code, if we figure this out, it's malpractice not for us to share this story with other school leaders that may need something out there. And it's not that we're not trying, right? Yeah, any school's got like a big event, like they got the events, and you got PTAs doing all this stuff, and the bake sales and all this stuff. But are they really honoring the funds of knowledge that parents and families have? And I don't care whether it's upper middle class, poverty, rural, or every single parent has a gift to bring that school. And it's not just the kids. But do we give them the platform to be able to invite them to the table? So it's not really talked about that much, right? I mean, and then if you look at it through the lens of professional learning communities, we're professionals, we are learning in community. And it's not just the community inside the school, Ross, it's our entire community that we serve.
Yeah. So you referenced their customer service mindset, right? I know you're working on another book around
Sure.
customer service experience in schools, and that is, a terminology, a way of conceiving of the student and family experience within schools, right? That is sometimes used, but not always. And I do think it may even feel like a hurdle for some school leaders, similar to sometimes I'll talk to school and district leaders around like enrollment marketing,
Mm,
right? And then, okay, we have this program. Maybe it's districts that we have a full-time virtual school program that's set up for students for whom that's appealing, or we have certain extracurriculars, or we have this, whatever it is, right?
mm,
And that the traditional mentality or traditional experience within public schools and public districts was as the default option, and ultimately
mhm.
that are built largely around the assumption that I guess the students didn't necessarily have a lot of alternative choices and they're going to come here. And it
Sure.
doesn't necessarily mean we're not trying to give them a good education or a good experience, but it meant that there wasn't necessarily a predisposition to proactively communicate about and really market the programs that we have and understand that in a environment with maybe more choices and more competition for students' time and enrollments and interest and just the sentiment toward
Mm,
what's appealing, that oftentimes the public school, right, the local public school may have programs that are just as good or better than exactly what families believe they're looking for in a charter or a private option or whatever. And yet they're not aware of that, or they don't assume that because the public hasn't talked about it as much,
yeah.
right? But I've found that sometimes in those conversations, like trying to kind of call it what it is, seems to almost lead to discomfort. Well, we don't really do marketing, and I feel
Yeah.
like sometimes the same thing can come with the customer service, that almost calling them the customer, which is what they are, right? I'm the consumer of what you have, I'm the
Yeah.
consumer of the instruction of your programs, etc. Feels, I don't know, uncomfortable for some people, but I think it is important to think about it that way and to think about it in terms of typically present in that is one of the primary reasons why companies invest in customer service is because they want to have that become a repeat customer. They want to
Yeah.
maintain that. They want them to keep coming back, right? They want them to feel good about what they're getting. And ultimately, no matter what that is, even if it's a student and a family who is going to remain enrolled, right? And they're not necessarily going to opt out of that school, like what
Hmm.
attitude are they coming with every day? How do they feel about that school? When you're the teacher who is in that position, what has your organization done and your leadership done to create a positive experience so that when you are in position to deliver that customer service, you are operating with the benefit of the doubt, right? With a family who's coming to you and they have questions, but they're expecting that they're going to get satisfactory answers because they've
Mhm.
had a positive experience, right? Versus I'm coming in, I have never had anybody else attempt to engage with me. I've never gotten any answers to my questions. And now I have kind of a negative attitude. And now the teacher's in position where I have to respond to this. And this family is
Exactly.
clearly upset, not because of anything I did. This kid just got to my class,
Yep.
but they've had a negative experience before. And so they're expecting that this is going to be more of the same. So I guess all of that is to say, what is your thought about that, how this starts with or doesn't with the leadership level in whichever organization, at the district level, at the school level, to really implement that mentality and really understand the value of when they can begin to foster that engagement, create programs around it, have inform and help and support and educate families, right, on the things
Yeah.
they might want to know about, what they should ask, and let them know proactively about what we're doing here, so you don't have to ask about everything because we're also going to tell you about it, right? And then you can ask questions about those things, but you're asking better questions. The difference that makes once it gets to the teacher level and you're that teacher who doesn't necessarily feel super trained on that, but now you're in much better position to succeed, I would imagine,
Yeah.
when people are coming to you and they're, feeling good about the organization generally.
Yeah, Ross, I mean, you kind of nailed it. It goes back to, in my work, man, I don't disparage any hardworking school leader or superintendent or teacher. Everyone is doing the absolute best that they can. But one thing that has been happening rampantly is go on your social media feed and look and see how much promotion is happening right now with charter schools, AI-based schools, all the voucher conversations that are going on. All of that, Ross, excuse me, is a symptom of us in the public school sector not valuing our expertise enough, not fighting harder for that. You talked about branding. I'm not talking about superficial branding, but like, listen, man, public schools are marketed every single day. It's every time there's a parent. It used to be word of mouth advertising is basically the cul-de-sac, and your parents are talking about how much they love or don't like the school. They are being missionaries for your brand. It's been happening forever. Whether or not a parent chooses to go and buy property in your community, like so they can go to your school, that's tremendous. But what's been happening we've just abdicated our excellence to real estate agents. Like if you ever here's something fun to do, look at real estate websites. There's always going to be a school link to that website. Go on Zillow.com and there will be a link, whether we like it or not. I think it's called greatschools.org or
Mhm.
niche.com or one of these online sites. And they're gonna give your school a rating, whether you like it or not. It's going to be correlated to your test scores. It's going to be correlated to what parents and family members and teachers are saying about you. And you could be a five-star school, right? And people are like, oh, and your property values are going to go up, right? So why is that happening? Yes, obviously, yeah, test scores and your results go a long way, but it's the perception is the reality. And we have forgotten that every time a parent enrolls their child in our school, from the parking lot to the front office secretary to the conversations with the teacher everything we do is creating not just a good service, because I think we do pretty good with serving our parents, but it's the experience that we're not doing, and no one's trained for it. If I were to ask school leaders how many front office secretaries are trained in customer service, like officially trained, I mean, good luck, right? How many school leaders have any kind of undergraduate or master's level class on creating customer service and experience, just like an MBA would? Zero. How many teachers have a class, right? They can all write good lesson plans when they come in, right? But we don't know how to we don't know how to talk to each other. We don't know how to deal with when there's a problem. We don't know how to create these experiences. And so because there's been this generational poverty of customer service and experience in our schools, and it's going to come up to bite us. And I think it's happening right now. And I hate to say it, and it's terrible that this is happening because I think our public schools should be like the exemplar. But what happens is even if we're working really hard, that perception's not there. Now, here's what I'm not talking about, like catering to every single child's unique needs, and like doing something that's just so crazy. I mean, we try to do that. We still have standards that we've got to teach. We still have assessments we got to give. We can't have 500 different programs going on in our public schools. But once again, we allow a culture of independence to run in our schools. So, when you ask you ask a parent like, we really want Miss Jones as a teacher. Well, why do you want Miss Jones as a teacher? Oh, Miss Jones as a teacher is great. She's been there for 20 years. Okay, well, there's like five other teachers on that grade level. So once again, this speaks to the culture of professional learning communities. So, bear with me here. Like, why do we put so much stock on our independent educators or one educators? Why aren't we putting more stock in our teams? Because it's a team that really teaching kids, if they're doing it the right way, if they're like honoring the evidence of research. I just had a conversation with John Hattie about collective teacher efficacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we just have this mindset, it's one teacher this and one teacher that. Oh, we really want this teacher. Well, that's like hurting us when it comes to branding our collective excellence. So kind of all over the place a little bit, but like the best schools have figured out, like it's not about the teacher that we get, because teachers come and go. It's about the team that we have. And school leaders also, if they can figure out how to serve their teachers and their staff exemplary and give them great services, then they will take care of the kids like you're talking about. But what happens is, Ross, is that a lot of agencies and a lot of founders and charter schools, and I'm not anti-charter schools, they're doing what they've got to do. They're setting up shop, across the street in the communities because our public schools have failed to really create an exemplary service. And here's the
Mm-hmm.
thing. Go to a public school's website. Just go to any public school website and see if you can find their vision and mission statement,
Mm-hmm.
right? See if you can find their vision and mission statement. Go on a website and see if you can find their essential standards. It's like little things that we can do to scale excellence we don't do. And it's not anyone's fault. It's just no one's told us why we should do this. And I don't have to show you like, peer-reviewed evidence or whatever. Just look and see how many parents are leaving your schools to go to charter schools and vouchers and take care of those vouchers. They're leaving because they didn't feel connected. Ross, you ever heard that story or the research about, you ever read Malcolm Gladwell's books? You ever read any of his books? Oh, I can't remember if it's in like Tipping Point or whatever. I love Malcolm Gladwell. But I think this was in like, I can't remember the book, but about medical malpractice lawsuits. Do you remember reading about the medical malpractice?
Yep. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's like if you really loved your doctor and the doctor had great service and experience, even if something terrible happened, you probably wouldn't sue the doctor.
Right.
But even if the doctor tried and had terrible bedside manner, terrible service, they're probably going to get sued. Well,
Mm-hmm.
there's something to be said about that type of mindset in our schools. And and I just think we really need to start thinking about things a little bit differently. So that's one of the things why I'm on this podcast, just to be able to help share that message.
Yeah, and when you were describing that earlier, I was thinking about something similar, and I was thinking about my car insurance
Oh,
company that I've had the same insurer for 10 or 15 years, a long time. And I've only had to submit claims
hmm,
twice,
okay.
maybe three times. And both times they made it easy, positive experience, got what I needed. And I know that they are pretty expensive,
Hmm.
right? And I look at the bills every month and I look around and, I get offers for other options and I'm like, man, I could probably save a fair amount of money by changing my insurer. But you know
That's
what?
right.
Like that time when I actually need them,
Yep.
and I have to deal with the hassle and I can't get what I want,
Yep.
or, my wife is driving and she needs roadside assistance and I don't trust that
Yeah.
they're going to help her. Is it going to be worth it? Is the peace of mind worth it to be like, you know what? I just know that I feel like I'll be taken care of because I was when I needed it.
Hmm.
And so I'm willing to, right, to pay a little extra for that. And, in this case, where other than their taxes, we're not even asking them to pay. And yet
Sure.
it's just the fact that as you mentioned, the feeling of when I come to the front office, is there customer service experience? Am I welcomed? Or when I'm in the classroom, does the teacher act like they want me there or not? Or I remember one time when I was in middle school and we had
Mm,
some kind of parent observation day or something.
okay, that's cool.
Science teacher just showed a video because she didn't want to teach in front of the parents. Right? And
Oh man, what a missed
it's like,
opportunity that
what
was.
message are you getting when it's very obvious that when I come in there and my child's school doesn't want me there,
Yeah,
right? It's either they have something to hide,
yeah,
like they're not really doing a good job here educating the kids and they don't want anybody to see that, or they don't value me as a stakeholder and they don't, and they're operating. And if you're the teacher who is unable to change your mentality of that, or the school leader, maybe you're operating too much from what's the worst that can happen to what's the best, right?
yeah,
I feel like this person being here, this outside, person who's not part of this class or whatever, is they're going to disrupt what we're trying to do here versus they could add to it, right? They're involved, they're asking good questions. Now that gives me an advocate and a partner that they're home and they're helping their child learn, help with their assignment. They understand it better. I can communicate to them, right? I'm creating, advocates who can augment what we're doing here. And what are those opportunities versus, oh, they're going to come in, they're going to ask me a bunch of questions, they're going to throw me off because I'm trying to do this. And, ultimately, it's almost the thing that we wish for, right? That very same teacher may find themselves wishing, I wish the parents were more involved.
yeah.
But like when the
Well, did
opportunity
you ask
presents
them?
itself,
Yeah, it's like, did
right?
you
Or when
ask
you have a
them?
conference, you're frustrated because we're having a parent-teacher conference and they don't really seem to know where I'm coming from, or they're not on board with this. And it's, well, what about all the opportunities up until then when you could
Exactly.
have created that dynamic,
Yep.
and did you recognize those opportunities or not? And and I know, we you talk about this and we're talking about it, but it's not necessarily, again, that all of these educators are sitting around looking for things to do.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
busy. They have a lot of work
You're
on
too
their
busy.
plate. I mean, how do we make this doable? So let's say I'm ready to give it a shot. I'm open to the possibility that better family engagement is really important. How do I practically address it?
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with a conversation. So here's some things that I do, Ross. I'm gonna ask you a question. So let's say I'm your coach, you're my principal, or you're my teacher. I'm gonna ask you a question. Ross, what is your favorite restaurant? I know about your
Oh,
insurance company, so now I'm gonna ask about what's your favorite restaurant? What's your favorite burger place? Let's narrow it down. I don't know if you're a sucker for a hamburger like I am. Like, what do you got? What do you do over there
yeah.
in Arlington? What do you do?
I'm a Shake Shack guy.
All right, why?
Why? I just think the food's good.
Is there a Shake Shack near your location, near your like
Mm,
is convenient? So there's
uh-huh.
convenience,
It's
right?
convenient.
Is it pretty consistent?
It's quite consistent. Yeah.
Quite consistent, right? So you get a
Hmm.
decent product at the price. Shake Shack can be a little expensive, not as expensive as Five Guys. I'm a
Right.
Five Guys guy, right?
Okay.
I'm a Northern Virginia Five Guys lover,
Hmm.
right? So I'm a Five Guys guy. So Shake Shack, consistent, you like it, you feel good. Now I've been to that one. There's a nice one in Arlington's nice. The one in DC,
Hmm.
not so nice. I've been to that one. Didn't feel safe. But the one in Arlington, I've been to that one. It's a nice, so it's a comfortable environment, right?
Hmm.
Pretty comfortable environment. So all these little things. So if I were to say, okay, that's your favorite place, how do we replicate those types of things in your school? So
Hmm.
what can we do consistently when when a parent comes to us? When a parent pulls up, how's the convenience like when they pull up into our parking lot? Is there clear signage? Can they access? Now we always want to be mindful of safety, absolutely. But when they come to your door, like you probably in most schools have like a doorbell that you have to ring. Does that feel like a prison or does it feel personable? Like that
Hmm.
little experience, right? And there's probably something. I don't know if like, the feeling that you have when you go in that Shake Shack, right? But there's probably you're greeted sort of, you know what I mean? And like you feel like a human being or do you feel like a prisoner? So like little things like this, like when a parent comes to your door as a school and they ring, because usually they ring a little bell, right? Like whoever's on that other line, they can see the parent, but the parent can't see them.
Mhm.
So like we're already killing ourselves with our experience because it's very transactional and not transformational, even from when you're trying to just get into the school. So instead of just saying ID, and you know that Ross Romano's coming for the event, Ross Romano, we are so glad that you're here. Go ahead and share your ID, and then we'll go ahead and buzz you in. And you're like, oh, Mr. Provencio, is that I see your picture right above the door buzzer. It's nice to see you too. Little things like that, man, we just don't even think about, right? So that's something that what does that cost? Nothing, right? When you go to the website, how do the parents that you serve see themselves on that website? I talked about vision and mission. I talked about some of those big things. Or is it just some canned AI generated website that we just slapped on there because we have to? Like that's what people look at when they're moving to your area. Once again, when the parent comes in to have a conversation with the principal, is it scheduled? Are they offered a bottle of water when they're waiting? Are they made to sit? Or is there people that are speaking conversely in their languages that they're there, right? I remember as a parent, excuse me, as a principal, when I would get a new parent that would be interested in our school, man, that's the most important thing I'm doing that day. I'm going to walk you around. I'm going to show you everything. I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to put a badge on them that says VIP, very important parent. And it's going to be like gold, like big. So when they're walking around, everyone sees that this is a new parent and everyone's going to just gush all over them and say, hey, thanks for coming to our school. We're so lucky to have you. This is a great school. And they got that badge and everyone can see. How simple is that, right? And it's like, hey, let's go into some of these classrooms. Let's see some excellence that's going on. And it's not fake. It's every single day. And probably in Shake Shack is not known for its customer service. I will give you that. I want you to try, like you ever been to In-N-Out Burger? You ever been in the West Coast In-N-Out Burger?
Only once.
Oh, now that's a burger place. So In-N-Out Burger, I'm fascinated with, right? There's like four things on the menu. You never see anyone on their cell phone. These kids are just awesome. Now they're just kids, right? That are serving it In-N-Out Burger. The quality, just like you said, the Shake Shack, the quality is great. It's very consistent. No one's on their phones. Great customer service. They can't screw anything up. But they don't just like hire like these really great, empathetic, customer-driven kids. They're kids. They train them. So customer service and experience is not like a one-day event or it's not a book study. It's part of the ethos and the culture of that school, right? And so like, hey, let's talk about how we can create great experiences, not only for our parents, but for our students. As we're still making sure that we're doing great instruction, let's make sure they see themselves in the instruction. So just like we want our students to have voice and choice, we want our parents to have voice and choice. And here's the thing, Ross, great customer service and experience for our students and our parents starts when our principals give great customer service to our internal customers, our teachers and our staff members. If they're taken care of, if they're given voice and choice, then it's going to spill over into the culture. So those are some questions that I would ask, like what's your best customer experience? How can we bring that into our school? Where are our bright spots as a school when it comes to serving those? And where are our blind spots? And these little things go a long way, and it's just intentional excellence, intentional excellence. And I think that speaks great for PLC work because PLC work is not team meetings, right? That's like
Mhm.
anti-PLC work, right? It's professionals learning in community, professionals trying to learn how to do our job better, doing that not in isolation or independently, but interdependently. And I think that's what great organizations do. That's what Shake Shack does. You know what I mean? But you got to try that. Five Guys, bro. I got to get you on the Five Guys bandwagon, man. I know there's some
You
Five
know
Guys
what?
around here.
I was a pretty early adopter with Five Guys, and I just haven't been there in a long time. I don't know why. But you are making me think now. I've had two over the years of the show here. I've had the pleasure of having two former kind of high level executives, Mark Miller and Deanne Turner from Chick-fil-A.
Okay,
And
right
Mark
on.
was the VP of high performance leadership. Deanne was the VP of people. I forget her exact title, but essentially determining the type of people they want to hire right into their corporate environment. And
Yeah.
you talk about an organization that the consistency and going in and the training. I had an experience recently, a little while ago, but had gone in to pick up an order from my wife had placed the order online and I was going in to pick it up and it was a new
Mm.
location and I just didn't recognize where the pickup window was. So I was going to pick it up by the counter, and I was standing there a while, and I was looking at the screen, and it like I didn't see the name, and I was just not quite sure I was in the right place. So I asked
Sure.
the guy who was working there, probably a high school student, and I said, "I'm here to pick up this order. I'm not sure if it's ready. Do you know, like, where am I supposed to pick it up? And I'm in the right place." And the pickup window was on the other side of the
Mm.
restaurant. And he said, "Oh, yeah, it's over there. One moment." And he came out from behind the counter, walked over to the window, got it, and brought it to me. Right.
Yeah.
And it made me feel old because I was like, why am I, I'm feeling impressed by this kid. But also, it was like, this is how consistently they do their training, right?
Sure.
Can you name any other fast food place? And I wouldn't have thought anything of it if he said, "Oh yeah, it's right over there," right?
Hmm.
Okay, great. I'll go get it.
I'll go get.
I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah.
And yet, the fact that he came around and went and got it and brought it to you, you said, "Wow, that's the extra difference," right? And
Yeah.
it's a place that, just focuses on being the best at what they do.
Yeah.
Right? They're not trying to change to be like any other place. And same thing with the schools. You mentioned how many schools have their mission, vision, values on their website, right?
Hmm.
That a lot of times there might just be that it's just overlooked because it's like assumed, or we think it's implied. Well, this is a school, so of
Yeah.
course, like, people know what a school is, right?
We're all about
But
the
it's like,
kids, of
what is
course.
this
Yeah.
school? What is your community? Who are
Yep.
your kids? Who is your faculty, right? What creates the pride of working there, of being a student there, of being a parent there, right? Of feeling like, again, that just because that we want people to feel like they are making an affirmative decision to be a stakeholder in
Yeah.
this school
Yeah.
community, even if it is, well, it's just the school that's up the road. It's where we live, so it's where my kids go, right? But do I still feel like we chose that, right?
Yeah.
Even if we didn't
Exactly.
necessarily, right? But in some ways you do. And
Yeah.
in some ways you choose. And do they make us, and do we understand when they're investing in a certain program? Are they eagerly sharing, hey, we're doing this because we really believe it's going to benefit the students in this way, and here's how we're doing it? Or do we never hear about it? Or do we only hear about it at a school board meeting where somebody stands up and says, "Well, how come you spent $50,000 on this thing?"
Mm.
And what's that about? And now they're defending themselves versus having come out in the first place and saying, "We made this decision because we think it'll be good," right? And now it's always going to feel like it's not as positive when you start off on the defensive because you didn't take the opportunity to share. And again, it could have been a really good thing, right? You could have
Yeah.
done it for all
Exactly.
the right reasons and made a decision that you felt was going to be really good for your community. But because you didn't do the job of thinking about who will care about this and why will they care and what will they want to know, and let's make sure they know that, now it looks like we're trying to hide it, or we just,
Mm.
we're just not showing them that we value what their role is in the community,
Oh
that you're
yeah.
a valued stakeholder, and it's important that I make the effort to make the information available to you about what we're doing here, or how you can get involved,
Hmm.
or inviting you, right, and giving you opportunities, or even at a further level, when it has to do with teaching and learning, what are questions that you might want to ask, or what are some of the things we're working, like, making you feel much more informed, so that now you don't have that intimidation to come in. And yeah, if
Yeah.
you're a parent that goes into a classroom, you haven't heard anything about what's going on for 2 months because your child isn't sharing that much with you, or you don't necessarily know the best questions to ask them. And now, what am I going to do? Right? I'm either going to be intimidated and I'm not going to really attempt to engage that much at all, or I'm going to ask questions that aren't the best questions because I'm
Oh,
starting from a
exactly.
point of no information.
And and I hate to say it, there's comfort in that.
Hmm.
There's comfort in ignorance. And so one of the things that I would encourage any principal or any teacher that's listening to this is to start with you, because you talked about where do you start? All right, parent teacher conferences. They're ubiquitous in the school, right? That is an opportunity not to have a one-way conversation, but to have a true transactional two-way conversation. So we talked about in PLC world, there are four, we call it four critical questions that guide the work of our collaborative teams. I don't know if your other guests have kind of talked about those four critical questions. They're very crucial. It's like and they're basic, man. They're like, what is it that we want our students to learn? Okay, that's your foundation of what is so important that's your four item on the In-N-Out burger menu, right?
Mhm.
That's just basic, right? So what do we want our students to learn? How will we know when they've learned it? Assessments, grades, how's it going to be assessed? How do we differentiate our instruction if students aren't learning? And how do we create extension and acceleration for students that have learned it? Four basic menu-based questions. Okay, now those are questions in the PLC world, Ross, that teachers ask themselves in order to engage in collective teacher efficacy. Take that if you're growing, and this is what in my book, if that's the kind of culture that you're growing with, why not empower your parents and your family members to ask our teachers the exact same questions? So imagine, Ross, we're at a special education meeting and I say, okay, team, before we start, I'm the parent. I really want to know what my child has to be learning on their IEP. What is so important? And I know you guys are going to get to it, but I really need to know what those specific IEP goals are. And the next thing I need to know is how he's going to be assessed so that he's meeting his goals. I need to know what that looks like in special education, and I need to know what that looks like in the classroom. My child struggles with their language arts skills. They struggle with phonics. So I need to know specifically how are you going to change and differentiate your instruction to help him with that area. And I also know that my child is very gifted in art. So I need to know maybe how we can extend and enrich with his funds of knowledge with art. Now, can you imagine if a parent holds us accountable by asking
Mhm.
that team those same questions that we ask ourselves? That's just four questions. And it
Right.
totally changes the dynamic, the ownership of what happens with man, listen, I got over 20 years experience. I got a couple of degrees, some masters. I've written books and art. But my most important job is I'm a dad. And Ross, I'm still intimidated when I go into my school. So I know all this stuff, but I'm still like on my edge when I'm meeting with my child's teacher. And I kind of know what I'm doing, right? So imagine a
Mhm.
parent who, like my parents, who didn't have that kind of agency. And so it's not hard. So when those parents are coming at the parent teacher conference, hand them a brochure that says, please ask your child's teacher these questions.
Mhm.
That's partnership, man. And it shows trust and it shows, I don't like the word vulnerability. I think vulnerability is a little overrated, but availability. It's showing that we're available for learning what our parents have to offer and that they're available for what we have to offer. These are the types of things that kind of move schools from just, teaching to really learning. And we can't forget that our parents are our child's first teachers. They may not be the best, but they're the first. So if we're learning together in community, I mean, if we're really doubling down on that taking a village kind of thing, then we got to invite all the villagers into the village to have that conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I don't think Shake Shack would have done that for you, by the way.
Unlikely, right? Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's just the thoughtfulness that goes into what is the experience that we want to create for the people who come here and what best equips them to feel successful, right? And
Yeah,
to
man.
want to come back and knowing that if we create the experience that they like, that they will come back for more, right? Are we, creating, I mean, is it a jewelry store where
Hmm.
you're able to browse and look around and and ask when you want some support and somebody's clearly available to you but they're not standing right over you like making you
Yeah.
feel intimidated and rushed and like you
Yeah, that's
know
why I don't
uh,
shop at Pentagon Row because there's always some officer
uh,
right there at the jewelry store, and I feel intimidated before I walk in. I'm like, screw it, I'm not going to go to
right,
Pentagon.
it's the just kind of understanding what like what is what makes people comfortable, makes them feel like they're able to operate, right? So in that case, handing them the questions, like, okay, at a baseline, I can ask these, they're expecting me. And now I can
Exactly.
also ask different ones and adapt off of it, but
Absolutely.
like they're telling me, come in and ask questions, right?
Yeah.
They're making me feel welcome, invited, giving me a starting point if I'm nervous or I don't know where to start. And we're just being, I guess, treated like you're welcome here and
Well,
you're
yeah.
part of what we're doing here and we're here to inform you,
Yeah.
which is all, you know, Obviously quite important. I guess we need to answer the question of what does all of this have to do with PLCs? I don't know if we
Yeah,
spent too
right.
much time on that, right? But how does that connect?
Well, let's think about this. For one thing, I kind of mentioned this before, and I'll say it a billion times until I'm sick of it. Like people with good intentions, I believe, will equate PLCs of just being team meetings. It's just a three-letter acronym to say, hey, when we meet together, we're PLCing, right? No. So the first thing to think about is my definition of professional learning community goes back to the DuFour's definition of professional learning communities. It's an ongoing process where educators work collaboratively in recurring cycles of collective inquiry and action research to achieve better results for the students that they serve. That's a culture of professional learning community, and it pairs perfectly with collective teacher efficacy. So it's that whole school is the professional learning community if it chooses to operate such, right? And so many schools operate, I mentioned this earlier, Ross, they operate like independent contractors, right? Hey,
Hmm.
like I think about my son's high school. I talk about this all the time, right? He has 7 different teachers, some AP teachers, some dual enrollment teachers. They all grade differently. Like they all have, he has 7 different interpretations of grading that he has to deal with. He has 7 different expectations that he has to deal with, 7 different learning styles that he has to deal with. And he's a pretty good kid. He's able to navigate those 7 things. That's not a professional learning community. It's a culture of independent contractors. And then I often think about schools where they departmentalize, where, Ross is the math teacher and Nathaniel's the language arts teacher and Joe over here is the social studies teacher and Sarah's the science teacher. And then kids switch. Why are they doing that? Well, they're doing that not because Ross has a master's in math from MIT. It's because Ross don't want to teach language arts because Ross don't like
Hmm.
to read. Or it's easier for Ross to just plan for math. Well, what happens when Ross goes on leave, right? He's got to go paternity leave or he gets sick. Well, the whole math department just left, right? And so everyone else is just like, well, we better get a good long-term sub to kind of take over that. But we meet together, but you're not engaged in action research or collective, inquiry. So the whole point is, yes, teams are part of professional learning communities, but they've got to have shared goals and they got to be able to work together. And it's not just what are we going to do? When are we going to do it? Who's testing? And then let's move on to kind of teach, test, hope for the best, move on to the rest. Is that these teams are in a culture where they're saying, hey, listen, we got to get better with what we got. So it's that team ethos, right? That we are only as good as each other. Ross can't do his job without Nathaniel. Nathaniel can't do his job without Ross. And I'm not saying departmentalize is anti kind of PLC work, but you got to be really structured. So
Hmm.
even from teams, and then it goes to like your leadership. Collectively, we're working together. We value everyone's input to be able to look at challenges, come up with solutions, action research, try to come up with a plan, implement the plan, look at evidence. Did we get a return on our investment? Do we have results for these actions? And then we move forward. Well, here's where the whole PLC work and parents comes into play. You use the same logic when you're trying to address your parent concerns. How is our parent attendance at our parent teacher conferences? That's the problem. We want to increase that. So collectively, let's get together. Let's invite our parents on board. Here's a problem. Let's engage in action research and collective inquiry to see if we can increase our parent and family visitations on our parent teacher conference. That's
Right.
wonderful. We have a student attendance issue. Well, it's not a student attendance issue, it's a parent issue, right? That's a problem. So, how do we collectively work in action research and collective inquiry to be able to solve that? How do we get other members of our community involved to be able to help it? Let's say we've got really low language arts scores. All right. How can our parents help us increase these specific standards? Do we need more books in the home? Do we need to have better partnerships with the library? Do we need to talk to businesses? Do we need to bring dads in to read to kids? All of these kinds of things, we can't just have that like superhero educator that's got all these ideas. It has to be done collectively. So if there's a culture of collective efficacy within the school, teams will be able to do that. The whole school will be able to do that. And that's the kind of school kids want to be in, where it's not
Hmm.
that we're lucky to have one teacher. Oh, we really hope we have that one teacher. No, we've got a whole team. It doesn't matter who we get because we know we've got a team approach. Now, that's the kind of school that really goes from average to excellent. So I hope that kind of answered your
Hmm.
question, that PLCs are not just teams that are meeting and they kumbaya or whatever. They're really engaged in analyzing evidence of their results. That's not just academics, that's everything.
Yeah. Do you have an example that comes to mind of a school you've seen that just they missed something, that something, failed, that fell flat. They missed something about the PLC process and it just didn't work.
Well, I mean, it happens all the times. There's so many schools that say they're PLC
Hmm.
because they've got time for their teams to collaborate, but then there's no habits of collective efficacy. So it's like we could say, hey, Ross, Nathaniel, Mary, go PLC. And they say, hey, we're PLCing, but but they don't do anything, right? Because
Right.
there's no habits of that. So great school leaders understand that they've got to cultivate habits of collective efficacy. They got to really double down on habits. I love James Cleary's work, Charles Duhigg's work, all the habit. It plays beautifully to PLC work. So what kind of environment do we need to be able to effectively collaborate in? Do we have a protocol, some guardrails that helps us really ask and answer very specific questions like those four critical questions? Are we goal setting when are we creating a formative assessment and setting goals with that, right? If we see that this standard is really challenging as a team, how do we get our parents and our families to help support us with this specific challenge? Are we talking to our parents and families about what these formative assessments look like? Maybe if we do have homework in practice, it's very specific so that parents can help us with that. Those are little things that happen, but it's an honor to be recognized as a true model professional learning community school. And there's hundreds of schools out there that are doing it. But the problem is PLC has become so ubiquitous of just like, any group of teachers that are collaborating that it's just call it any other three-letter acronym or whatever, but it's really not helping. So yeah, there's a school that I love outside of Louisville, Kentucky, and they saw a need with their language arts, their student reading and comprehension. And they also had a need where parents and families were, this is a Title I school, so there was a lot of poverty in the community. And so Shannon, shout out to Shannon Vapp. She was the principal of that school. And so they created this awesome, I don't want to call it a program, but it was an awesome opportunity where they called it bringing it to the dinner table. And what they did, Ross, is that they identified very specific language arts standards that their school needed help with. And then they had a team, once again, that collective efficacy, that collective team approach. They lined up children's books that could correlate with that language arts skill. Now, here's where it was really cool. Shannon did an amazing thing with this. Each book had a food theme to it. So then what they did was is that they aligned the language arts standard with a children's book that correlated with food. And then what they would do is then they would create recipes and give actual foodstuffs that went along with that book. And then parents and families all could pick up that book. They came to the school after the school. And dude, they not only got a free book, but they got lessons to go with that standard. And then they got food to be able to make a dish with that. Like, yes, it was an event, but oh my gosh, it tied everything together. And then she
Yeah.
saw results from that. I mean, that's tremendous. Now, those are the types of things that don't happen in isolation. You got to have a collective approach. That's a wonderful experience. Not only was that a great service, but that was a great experience. And she engendered some trust with that community, right? So when something fails, and things are going to fail in our public schools, you've got this service recovery paradox because we've engendered so much trust with our parents and families. If something bad happens, hey, listen, like we got you. We're trying to do the best that we can. I mean, those are the types of environments and cultures that are crushing it. So my shout out to Shannon Pfaff over in outside of Louisville, Southside Elementary. There you go.
Excellent. Well, listeners, the book is called Community Connections in Your PLC at Work, A Guide to Engaging Families. You can find it from Solution Tree. You could also learn about Nathan at his website, provenprincipalllc.com. Nathaniel, anything else you want to direct our listeners to check out? Anything on your website? Anything else so they can work with you on?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if this is something that you are remotely interested in, if you are remotely interested in like just figuring out do we have a good customer service and experience culture? Like, am I serving my teachers and my teams like we should? How's my parent and family engagement? How's our student ownership and agency that we have in our school? If you have any questions about that, just yeah, go on my website, look me up, give me a call or whatever. We'll talk through it, man, because like this stuff is just, it's just, we want yes, we want to serve our kids and we want to serve our teachers and we want to serve our families, but are we giving them the kind of experience that's going to be memorable? And I think that's what something that's kind of missing in our schools, man. We do a great job with teaching, but when it comes to learning, then that's another conversation. So yeah, so if we're anyone out there wants a little bit of boost to that, man, give me a call and see what we can do to help you out.
Excellent. Well, listeners, yeah, there's no way to improve that experience unless we really know what people are experiencing, right? So don't be afraid of it. Dive into it, but it really is the key to better, to improving, to closing where those gaps may be. So check that out. We'll put the link again to Nathaniel's book below, his website as well. This has been Nathaniel Provencio here on The Authority with Ross Romano. And we're also, if you're not subscribed yet, please do subscribe. We'll have more episodes coming your way every week. Or if you've been enjoying the show, we really do appreciate those 5-star Apple reviews or Spotify, wherever you listen. They really are incredibly helpful in helping other people find the show, much like we've been discussing here. It's that word of mouth, that social proof that shows your peers that this is something you're getting value out of. So please do. It take, I mean, 5 seconds. I think it's pretty quick if you're already listening, but makes all the difference. So we really appreciate that. Thanks as always for joining us. Really appreciate you listening. And Nathaniel, really appreciate you being here.
All right, man. Five Guys, I got to make you a convert. Let's do it.